normal to feel just a bit stressed at work from time to time. I'm sure we all do. You're juggling tasks. Look, you're sitting in the traffic right now going home, for example. You're dealing with deadlines. You're managing staff, trying to deliver something on budget. You know the drift. It makes no difference what you're doing. Sometimes it's stressy. But it becomes a problem when you start to bring your workplace stress home with you. In fact, research from Harvard University says that 80% of kids say they notice when their parents bring work-related stress home. I know my kids do. And I'm not happy about that. So how do you prevent this from happening? How do you ignore the calling of your work when you're in your haven, your home, your cave with your family? Tony Wilson is a workplace performance expert and he's on Smart Money. G'day, Tony.
How are you, Nick?
Yeah, look, I'm not too stressy. I'm okay today. I think I'm still pretending I'm on holidays.
Yeah, I think some of us are like that, aren't we?
Yeah.
Still living about a week and a half ago, I think.
Yeah, that's right. Look, these figures, they're disturbing, but I would imagine it's pretty common. Most people are stressed out by their work to various degrees. Would you agree with that?
Mate, I would say the vast majority of people are, and I think ever since the GFC, we've sort of had this, this environment where everyone needs to do more with less. We've had people leave our organisations for whatever reason, and those companies aren't replacing those people, so the burden goes on to others.
Yeah. And look, I've got to say, I'm glad you've mentioned the global financial crisis because we've just spent the last 40 minutes getting a lot of great wisdom from Brett Steen about finance. Beyond the workplace, there's so much more that is work-related to do once we get home. Checking emails, checking your finances. Is it okay? Am I being overcharged? Is my super performing? I've got to print off that invoice that, some company now insists on emailing me as opposed to posting it to me. So the workload's increasing beyond the workplace, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And, we come home and if it is actually work-related, we're checking emails and that sort of thing. But like you said, there's always, there's a lot of home stuff to keep on top of. And then on top of that, there's a lot of expectations on us as parents as well to spend time with our kids, to do things with them, which is fantastic, but it just adds another layer and another drain on our time.
It does. And I used to kid myself thinking that doing gardening, which I love with the kids as well, was fun for the kids. But when Dad's hanging off the lawnmower for 2 hours, it's actually just Dad still working.
Yeah, exactly. And even worse for the kids. Maybe it feels like the kids are working.
Yeah, that's right. So this Harvard study says 80% of kids can tell when their parents are stressed by work. Were you alarmed the number was that high?
Do you know what? I'm not alarmed that 80% of people or more are bringing stress home because I think that's just our environment. But the fact that the kids are noticing it, I think, is really amazing. I wouldn't have expected, and I'd be in this boat some days. I definitely would bring work stress home, and it really worries me that so many kids can actually recognise that in us.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from people who are driving home tonight. How do you handle stress? How do you make a conscious decision not to take your work home? 13 12 83. Let us know. And what are you seeing in your kids? Do they see you stressed out? 13 12 83. And how's that impacting at home when you get back to the cave? 13 12 83. Now, the study also finds that those who check in with work after hours or maybe go into the office on the weekends, those kids are 200% more likely to say that you come home in a bad mood. So those parents are really, really impacting badly upon their kids.
Oh, that's right. And, one of the other things that came back from the study was that kids just want to have fun with you regardless of what you're doing, And some of the kids surveyed said, it doesn't matter what we're doing as long as we're together and we're having fun. And I suppose that fun gets sapped out of us when we're constantly checking emails and that sort of thing, or we have to interrupt what we're doing, duck back into the office and do something when we're not supposed to be there. And, I think our families have this expectation that when we're with them, we're with them. But in a lot of ways, we're not. There's part of us still at work.
There's an image I often have that pops up. I saw it a couple of years ago, and it's really quite sad, and that is a parent at the playground taking the kids to go and play on the monkey bars, and there they are sitting with their face in the phone, and the child is just doing loop-de-loops and hanging off the monkey bars, trying desperately to get the attention of the parent, because all the child wants to do is hang out with them.
Exactly. And, one of the other things that came up in this study, they went to a school carnival, so like a school fete with rides and, everything there that kids could want. But they were all distracted by mobile devices. Instead, with all this stuff going on around them, they were all distracted by these mobile devices. And when they questioned these kids about it, they said, "This is what my parents do, so this must be fun."
Yeah, right.
So they've seen us,
Yeah.
engrossed in these smartphones and tablets and whatever, and so they think that is, that's entertaining as opposed to the other things they could be doing.
We've got to be so careful what messages we send to our children by our behaviours, right?
Oh, definitely. And whether that's just the technology thing or whether that, again, that is the mood that we come home in.
Yeah.
There's a lot of examples we set probably sometimes without us knowing, and what this study is showing us is even if we don't realise we're doing it, our kids do.
The great thing about being a parent, or one of the great things, there are many, but for me it forces me to be a better person.
Yeah, without a doubt, and I think, it's almost though that's another a layer. 21st century, there's so much expected of us, and especially when we get home, I hear of these, eras where fathers came home and put their feet up and watched television and had a beer and kissed the kids goodnight, and that was the extent of their involvement,
Yeah.
But these days, we're fortunate to be a bit more self-aware than that and a bit more emotionally intelligent. We want to be involved with our kids, you know what I mean? And so making the time for that is kind of paramount. Okay,
so we've mentioned smartphones, iPhones, whatever you want to call them. They make it very easy for us to be all the time connected. Who's to blame? Is it us not being more vigilant in not using devices, or is it pressure that people are feeling from the workplace to be on all the time?
I think most of it is pressure. I think there's both sides here, but I think a lot of it's pressure. I think in some organisations, it's expected that you will get back to people if they email you, and it doesn't matter what time that email comes through, you'll get back to them. There's a lot of, I've worked with other organisations out there where that's not the case. The senior managers aren't really like that, but there's this feeling from the employee that that they need to do it. It's like these mobile phones. That constant ping of the email breeds this sense of urgency in us, and we've got to do something about it right away to kind of stop it from bugging us. So there's probably a bit of give and take there. I do notice that just recently in France they passed a law which says you do not have to get back to your employer via digital information if it's after hours.
No, that's exactly right. Look, the Europeans are ahead of it. In fact, way back in 2011, some Euro companies foresaw the trend, and Volkswagen agreed to deactivate workers' BlackBerries out of hours so bosses couldn't pester them. Do you think Australia needs to embrace what the French did on January 1 and introduce some kind of law that lets workers guarantees that workers are not obligated to respond out of hours?
I think that we need to do something, and again, I think it's both sides of the fence. I think that we need to do something so that some managers don't enforce that on their employees, but we also need to do it because our self-control around this is pretty bad, so to maybe rewire some of our own behaviours.
Yeah.
I think that, I think the French law, I'm not sure how much it will help because what they're saying is that you don't have to get back to people, but that doesn't stop people from emailing, and it doesn't often stop that sense of urgency you have to get back to people. Sometimes that's just this sort of intrinsic drive. I think what you're saying, what Volkswagen did, and I've worked with another couple of companies that have done similar things where they set up their servers so that if you send an email after 6 at night, it actually doesn't go anywhere. It won't be delivered until 7:30, 8 o'clock the next morning. And if we do that, then we kind of cover all the bases, I think.
Okay, just just quickly, Tony, to wrap up, because you know this stuff. Top 3 suggestions to relieve stress, to stop stress going home with us.
Yeah, I think, the funny thing is these are all really, really simple things. They require a little bit of discipline, but they're really effective. So number 1 would be, before you leave the office, think of the 2 or 3 things, really big things that need to get done tomorrow, and write those things down in your calendar, make a time to do it. So when we do that, our bodies and brains kind of treat that as though we've already taken care of it. Okay. So we don't have to get home and, worry about those things when we're trying to connect with our family. The second thing would be, when you leave work, leave work. Try to find a way to kind of disconnect from work on the way home. So whether you're driving or you're sitting in the bus or catching the train or whatever, try not to squeeze in those last couple of phone calls or read those couple of documents or answer those emails. Just leave work at work. And what this does is it helps us transition out of work mode and into home mode. And it also almost marks this kind of psychological end to the day. You know, I've left the office, I'm not doing anything else. So I think that's really important. And one that's really easy to implement is just taking regular small recovery breaks during the day. So every couple of hours, even if you take 5 or 10 minutes to just literally do nothing for a little while, whether you walk to the cafe and get a coffee and just sit down or take a slow walk back to the office or whatever, but just disengage from the actual physical workspace if you can, disengage from the mental stress of work if you can. And what we find is when we do that regularly throughout the day, it starts to reset our stress chemicals back down to baseline a little more so they're not as high at the end of the day when we finish.
Great stuff. Tony Wilson, thanks for your time. Workplace performance expert. I hope that helps you de-stress as you drive home. Nick Bennett with you.